Hey,
So,
folks, we are live right now. I'm with Rick Wilson. You know him, you love him, you hate him. We were just
nice
talking
to hear.
about how we had a mind sink because I did a post about like 2 hours ago where I wrote more people should be talking about the utter freak that is Stephen Miller and his white nationalist worldview. He's the architect behind most of this chaos as Trump is golfing, falling asleep during meetings, making money off of meme coins, and tripping while climbing stairs. And Rick, his latest video is all about Stephen Miller and his endgame. And as we're discussing this, Rick, I don't know if you saw the latest news in the past hour. Donald Trump forgot that he has forgot what day his military parade is. He said that anybody who protests the military parade on Sunday, it's Saturday, will be, quote, met with heavy force. And he also said he's open to invoking the Insurrection Act to what's happening in LA, where he has sent 4,000 National Guard members, 700 Marines, the LAPD, and masked ICE agents who are pouring fuel to the fire that he created. And the person who's the architect behind this, which people don't realize, is Stephen Miller. And Wall Street Journal story just recently showed that Stephen Miller has unleashed ICE agents to go at Home Depots, 7-Elevens, arrest anyone who can, go to elementary schools. They have to meet a quota. And the person who's real brains behind this, the white nationalist Pee Wee German, is Steve Miller. I give it to you.
Look, Stephen Miller is one of the darkest and shittiest human beings that we have encountered in American political life since Joseph McCarthy, and that's a high bar. But he is basically someone just said the other day he's the id of Trump. I don't think he's the id of Trump. I think he reflects Trump and Trumpism
Mm.
perfectly. This is a very dark guy. He's a very angry guy. I don't know who hurt him in his life. I don't know who broke his heart when he was in high school or who effed him up. But this guy is such a broken figure, such a dark figure, and he's not ashamed of it. He revels in being the equivalent of a Reinhard Heydrich. He loves being the worst human being on earth. And look, I think we've had a lot of folks in this country who we can look back on and say, not a good guy. But Stephen Miller is an all-time award-winning not a good guy.
He's how does he make Roger Stone look like?
Look, I mean, Roger's a degenerate, but Miller is pure evil. Roger's a hustler. Roger's trying to make money and trying to, be in the mix. But Stephen is a dark figure.
Mm.
And he's literally one of the most heinous and broken and evil people we've ever seen in our politics, and he's using his power to harm not just immigrants but the country. He really wants this to be the shootout in LA. He wants this to become a violent interaction between the military and American civilians because this is his goal. This is what he's after. We should not pretend Stephen Miller is not very deliberate about all this and very that he means all of this in the bottom of his dark, evil heart.
Before we get into what's happening in LA, I think it's important to lay the groundwork because we've kept the receipts. Talk to us about Stephen Miller's role in the first Trump administration. And
Sure.
because people don't know that he was the architect behind some of these horrific policies, but also the ideology that's behind it.
Yeah, somebody said the other day that Stephen Miller, in the first administration, just couldn't quite get there. He didn't quite get what he wanted in terms of power or position, and I think that's generally correct. I don't think he got to the level he wanted to be at inside Trump's, you know, orbit of power. Now while his title is deputy chief of staff, he is in fact more powerful than the chief of staff.
Yep.
He gets to do whatever he wants. And he has really set out to reshape this country and to and to redefine this country around his own white nationalist weird um, you know uh, uh, ideology. And he relies on the fact that Trump is too lazy and stupid to like do anything about it. Trump knows in his like Trump brain that immigration stuff is a good issue for him. And so Miller became the immigration guy. and therefore gained power in Trump's world and Trump's universe, which is exactly um, kind of what you would expect. Trump said, "This is a guy who's as who gets how broken my base is and who gets how broken I am. So we'll let him play."
And, Stephen Miller, for those who don't know, he's a person who, before he entered the Trump sphere, he was with Jeff Sessions. And specifically, he was part and parcel of Jeff Sessions' attacks on immigrants, right? Where Jeff Sessions was
Yep.
perfectly fine meeting with FAIR, which is the Southern Poverty Law Center, said is an extremist anti-immigrant group that promotes white supremacist conspiracy. There's Stephen Miller, when he was at Duke, allegedly one of his mentors was a Nazi, Richard Spencer.
Richard
Uh,
Spencer. Yep.
yeah, one of the people that also Stephen Miller associated with was David Horowitz, and during Islam Awareness Week, he ran, what was it, Islamofascism Week. So Stephen Miller is a man who we don't know, but we have Jean Guerrero's fantastic book Hate Monger, and it seems somewhere in teenage years in high school when his family had to move to Santa Monica, even though they were
Yeah.
really wealthy, and he was surrounded by a large Latino community. His former friend said one day he comes back after summer. He just straight up radicalized, like straight up using hate against them. And
Yeah.
I always used to joke because, like, maybe he wanted like a date with a cute Latina girl, and they're like, "You're a dork," or maybe the
Right.
Latino dudes are like, "You're an incel." But there's something that triggered him with that move, being this nerd incel in that environment, and he's been like this, folks, since he was a teenager, since a high schooler.
I think that's the most interesting story we don't know. What broke his brain? What red pilled him? What caused him to become such a evil, dark, fucked up guy? But he has become, every cliche of Stephen Miller is real. He is that dark. He is that bad. He is that person that that you wouldn't invite Stephen Miller to your house for dinner if you knew the way he thought about people. And he revels in it. He absolutely loves this shit. He loves being the bad guy. He loves being the you know, people call him the, Santa Monica Goebbels. I call him the Reinhard Heydrich. Heydrich was the guy who organized the Wannsee conference and built out the Holocaust. He was the guy who was the engineer behind all the showmanship. And I don't think I know people will lecture me. How dare you say that about him? No, he has chosen this path. And if we call him on it, it's that amazing idea that when your actions start to have consequences, you complain about them and call your critics anti-Semitic or whatever. He has done these things. This is his MO. He is a guy who hates everybody who is not. And the irony is that Stephen Miller is not a, Aryan specimen. Stephen Miller is not some sort of like godlike figure. He's a weird, pasty, reptilian incel creep. And his wife may now be being, impregnated by Elon Musk for all we know.
You went there. I call him Pee Wee German, and folks, his own family, Stephen Miller's own family, has rejected him. Stephen Miller's
Oh yeah.
own family said that he's a Shonda. And people who say that, well, oh, Jews can't be anti-Semitic or racist. Yeah, a lot of people who are married to women and have moms are misogynist. There's the Clarence Thomas of it all. Stephen Miller is a man
Yeah.
who deeply seems to hate himself and deeply seems to not
Clearly.
understand history, and has aligned himself with what he considers to be the real American, which to him is a white American. And folks, he should remember that Jews aren't considered white by white nationalists and white supremacists. But during the first
Correct.
administration, a small piece of news, because I try to keep the receipts, Rick, is that Stephen Miller was the one seeding Breitbart. There was a young white female reporter who got radicalized into becoming a white nationalist. Apparently, she got
Katie,
radicalized out of it.
Katie, what was her name?
Tell him the story about what Stephen Miller sent her.
I don't remember the story, what he sent her. I remember her though.
Yeah.
And
She said that he was the one who gave her literal white nationalist talking points to launder through Breitbart
oh, right.
during the
Yes, yes,
first
yes.
Trump administration. She said not racist. She said white nationalist talking points. So I think it's very important to realize that this is who Stephen Miller is: an extremist, a white nationalist, an Islamophobe, the architect behind the first failed Trump Muslim ban, a man who wants to end birthright citizenship, a man who said one of the worst things that ever happened to America was the 1965 Immigration Nationality Act, which is why I'm here, which is why my parents are here, which is why so many Asians and Latinos are here. A man who wants to go back to the 1930s and bring back manufacturing, right? Which will, of course, destroy America because no one wants to pay freaking $3,000 for an iPhone. A man who's perfectly willing, Rick, to destroy America to create this warped, romanticized vision of a white supremacist America that never really existed in the first place. And I think it's
Right.
important that you're saying that Donald Trump is the man who kind of lets him do it. And even Donald Trump has said in the past that, yeah, this guy's kind of too extreme on immigration. An example of Stephen Miller running the show, Signalgate. I want to go back to Signalgate for a second. It was J.D.
Yes.
Vance.
You saw it in Signalgate. They clearly are all afraid of Stephen Miller.
Can you explain that to folks?
So in Signalgate, there were some differences of opinion on this strike against the Houthis, and and the people that were arguing against it, e.g., J.D. Vance, um, were were all looking over their shoulder, like, what does Stephen Miller think? What did Stephen say? Does Stephen approve? And that idea that Stephen Miller should be running American foreign policy should absolutely terrify you, because this ain't the guy. He does not really view America in the sense of being a constitutional republic. He views America as blood and soil white nationalism. And if we ended up with Stephen Miller, as we have, essentially running the White House, setting the policy agenda, setting the overall agenda, we're going to end up in a country that does not look like America at all. Now, he'd be happy with that.
Yeah, and you said use the words in your video, invading LA. It's the same words that I've used. Why do you call it him invading LA? Tell us about
Look,
what's happening with LA specifically.
Stephen Miller is in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, not on paper, but in reality. Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, all these goons, they work for Stephen Miller. Pam Bondi, Department of Justice. Stephen Miller is also in charge of the Department of Justice. He sets the agenda for the DOJ. So everything involved in both the pursuit of these immigrants and in the broader, legal and military pressure being brought on LA right now, it's Stephen Miller's handiwork. He's the guy underneath all this. And I am very, very deeply convinced that that Miller wants, because look at the way he's tweeting. He's talking about insurrection, rebellion, all these things. He wants a shooting match.
Mm,
Excuse me.
bless you.
Ah, woo. Excuse me. But he wants this to get violent. He wants this to get out of control. He wants this to get weird and bad. And I really believe we have to keep our eyes on this guy in the coming days and weeks, because it will not get any easier with Miller if he starts getting more resistance from either people on the ground at the grassroots, or in the courts, or from the state of California. None of it adds up to a formula where Miller is a happy camper right now.
Can you explain? And I'm using analogies to Germany. So are you? And you said he's not Goebbels, but he's Heydrich, who was the architect, if you will, of the
Right.
final solution, and an SS officer. And right now, it seems that Stephen Miller has his own Gestapo and Stasi in the form of radical ICE agents who are masked thugs or behaving like masked thugs. Literally, folks, kidnapping people off. If you don't like that analogy, I'll give you some examples. Rumeza Ostrich, 30-year-old Turkish grad student, literally kidnapped in broad daylight. Her
Right.
crime? Co-wrote an op-ed. Pro-Palestinian activists and students, right? No crimes charge. 238 brown people, including Abrego Kilmar Garcia, no due process, literally kidnapped and sent to a foreign gulag. They've showed up, folks, at schools, at schools to pick up kids.
They're snatching kids from volleyball practice. Obviously MS-13 meets at most volleyball games, so that's why they have to be there.
I mean, they have
Clearly.
to get their cardio in, right? Of course. I mean, it's all about wellness and fitness. And now they're going against, picking up, arresting union leaders, in their SUV driving over protesters, right?
Right.
Just straight up getting individuals. I don't know if you saw this news, Rick, and I just talked to Officer Harry Dunn about it. One of my fears, two fears that I've had, well, three fears that I had about masked ICE agents being unleashed is what we're witnessing in LA, number one. Number two, we have a country of over 400 million guns. What's going to happen, Rick, if these dudes, oh, I don't know, put their hands on someone who, without, telling people who they are, and that person has a gun?
Listen, because I've lived with death threats now from these assholes for 10 years, I carry a gun. I got a concealed carry permit. I am well trained. You come up to me with a mask on and no ID and no badge, you better hope that that you've got your health insurance up to date. That shit is not how America works. If the shoe was on the other foot and Joe Biden were sending cops out um to go to against people with illegal guns and they didn't have masks or badges on, I promise you the right wing would be absolutely out of their goddamn minds about it. This is just not where this is not how America should be. Our law enforcement in America, the reason you need to show a warrant, the reason you need to not wear a mask as a cop, the reason you need to be to give probable cause, the reason you need to have a name badge is because we don't live in a country where there's a secret police, or we didn't at least. And none of that is excusable in an America where we have long suffered through bias in policing that is real. And I say that not as some sort of liberal, I say that as a conservative, because this country has not applied justice equally for a good bit of its history, and people have a legitimate concern about the abuse of power. And if we allow power to be abused, it will be abused more. Every time you don't punish abuses of power, you get more abuses of power.
And
So
and we're witnessing this in literally in real time, folks, as Donald Trump is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. Literally, the LAPD, which has a terrible history of fraught relations with its black and brown communities, folks, the LAPD is thanking the citizens for being organized for the most part and peaceful.
right,
The LAPD is begging Donald Trump to back off. The LAPD said the National Guard made things worse. Then today they're saying the Marines are making things worse. Things are getting more chaotic. They can't respond to the 9/11 calls, right?
yep,
It's a recipe right now, Rick. To me, this looks like you speak about Stephen Miller, speak about, parallels that we can make with other authoritarian regimes. This looks like they are trying to create their Reichstag fire in LA. Am I wrong
yes,
with this?
that is precisely what they're doing. There's no better parallel. It is they are looking for here's what Stephen Miller's fantasizing about right now. Well, his wife coming home from Elon first off, but what he's fantasizing about right now is that a protester throws a rock or shoots a cop and kills a police officer, which nobody wants, and nobody is even it's a nightmare for legitimate protests, right? They want that so that they can go in and respond with overwhelming violent force. They want to use the power of the state to punish people who they view as their enemies. And that would be how they would do it. They would go in and say, "Okay, well, you harmed a cop, you shot a cop. Now we're going to go in and use live rounds. Now we're going to go in and go completely out of there will be no boundaries for us now." I think that is a very dangerous world to be in. Um, and I truly hope that we make it through the next few days of these guys trying to engage in an abuse of power like we've rarely seen before.
For the breathers who believe anything and everything that Fox and One American News Network tell them, and are applauding this, and if they're watching and if this spreads to MAGA, can you explain to them why a militarized presence in a major city and Stephen Miller having his own secret police terrorizing California is a terrible precedent for them, Rick?
Look, these guys, these guys have never, for a moment, hesitated to say, "Oh, if the state comes for me, I'm going to fight back." And if you look at this, if you look at this world that they live in, imagining that the Constitution um, suddenly doesn't matter, they will regret not having it in the future. They will regret not having laws and rights and protections and the rule of law in the future. And people who don't understand that, it truly baffles me. These pocket constitution motherfuckers who for years were like, the 10th Amendment says the states must have their rights to do what. Well, right now they're like, nope, California doesn't have any 10th Amendment rights. They don't get to govern themselves. The whole thing is a real, it's a nightmare and it's an outrage, but it is unsurprising at this point that they are willing to compromise what they claimed were conservative principles, because they're not conservatives. They're statists and they're fascists.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the word fascism can be used now. I think the word authoritarian can be used now. I think the word oligarchy can be used now because, folks, we normalize, well, you and I didn't, the January 6th insurrection. We normalized, you and I didn't, the pardoning of the 1,600 violent
Yep.
insurrectionists. And Donald Trump, right before the election, I kept warning people when he quoted Hitler yet again and said that he would unleash the National Guard and military against the people. Folks, he's doing everything that he said he would.
He
And a
told you
lot of
what he
folks
would
in the
do.
establishment and corporate media and institutions still do the both sides. I want to ask you about two big questions before I let you go. The Democratic response to what you've been seeing this week. I know you never miss an opportunity to take a shit at weak, feckless Democrats, so I'm giving you a soft meatball down the middle.
Look, Newsom has done very well. Okay. And
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Newsom like fanboy, but he's done very well. He's been with the fuck you attitude back at them. Today, I saw Democrats in Congress basically give Pete Hegseth a pass.
Mm.
They asked him a few tough questions, but they weren't consistent. They didn't beat on him and say, wait a minute, motherfucker. No, answer the question. And so I feel like that. I feel like we've had an opportunity here for Democrats to fight back. And as usual, um, you don't see every one of them marching in coordination and lockstep, which they should be, which is, I say this to Democrats a lot. You don't have to like what Republicans believe in. You don't have to like what they do, but you have to look at the game they play. And
Mm.
are they playing the game better than you are? And the answer is universally yes. They play the game of of pushing back and reframing narratives and setting the terms of the debate every single time. And the Democrats are like, oh no, that would be rude of us or something. I mean, I don't. God bless them. I try my best to help, man, but it is an uphill climb sometimes, my friend.
Well, the polls right now, actually, I don't know if you saw the polls right now. Majority of Americans disapprove of what Donald Trump is doing at the crackdown on immigrants. And even though a poll
Yeah.
came out 3 days ago that said he's still the one thing he's positive on barely is immigration. The deeper dive in that poll, Rick, is that once Americans, the same Americans who approve of his handling of immigration, are told that nonviolent criminals are going to be attacked, it plunges, which actually explains
Yep.
Abrego Kilmar Garcia, why Donald Trump is -20. So for me, if I'm a Democrat and I'm looking at these polls, I go all in. I talk about Abrego Kilmar Garcia. I talk about the abuse of due process. I talk about the abuse of rights. I talk about innocent
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. You go into this thing and you treat Trump like he's a criminal defendant on trial. That is something he is, if he's committing crimes and acting like a criminal, treat him like a criminal. And the Democrats seem to want to say, oh, well, we'll get back to talking about climate change and that'll convince young voters to come back home. I'm sorry. The reason Trump has been effective as a communicator is he doesn't give a fuck about regular Republican policies, which are generally not super popular in this day and age. But he has been great at being a populist, nationalist, wild hare. Um, and it's hard for Democrats to counter that in this day and age without believing in something beyond like some fairly anodyne policy positions that nobody really is voting on, given the sweep of where we are right now.
I have to also ask you about, you keep mentioning Stephen Miller's wife. Uh, this Musk Trump fallout. Is it a fallout?
Yes.
Is it ruptured? Is
Yes.
Musk groveling back? What's happening?
He's going to try to come back. He's not going to get back. He said to Trump one thing that Trump can't forgive. He said, Now, it wasn't the Epstein thing. What he said was, I won the election for Trump. Trump wouldn't be president without me.
Yeah.
There's nothing else Trump hates more than that idea. So that's where I think he is in some significant, hard to get back into the good graces of Donald at that point. So
And
we'll watch.
shouldn't we
Listen, I
explain?
got a hot,
You got to run.
man.
All right. All right.
I got to run.
Rick's got to run, folks. This is Rick Substack, the Rick Wilson
Great being
Substack.
with you guys.
And thank you all for joining the Left Hook. We'll see you later. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.